our creed to break the chains and set us free. Riders on the prairie, wild and free, bows and arrows, Colt 45's decree. No more tyranny, no more lies, under open skies we rise. Fight, fight, fight till we reclaim the night. Cowboys and Indians in the blazing light. Fight, fight, fight till the dawn is near. We'll never live in fear. On the blood moon, we all unite. Horse loose thunder in the night. No longer slaves to the empire's might. Strength in numbers, strength in rise. On the blood moon, we unite. Horse loose thunder in the night.
You know, I've heard that song well over 100 times, and I still love it. I
Me
still
too,
love that
brother.
intro, man.
Me too.
You guys, welcome today to the 39th episode of the Cowboys and Indians podcast. A bit of things running around the news, not too much. I mean, Trump did just slap a 25% tariff on all cars in Canada, so they're kind of going through some mass layoffs, and you know that's just it is what it is, man. But I'm the host, Native Patriot. Of course, with me today is my co-host, Steve. How you doing today, Steve?
Man, I am so good. It's been a better week this week. We had a really terrible week last week at work, but things are better. Some other news, brother. Donald Trump just re-endorsed Lindsey Graham.
Bro,
Did you see that?
what?
Yes, he did. So Lindsey Graham did endorse Donald Trump for the 2024 election, and he returned the favor. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he considers Lindsey a useful idiot or he doesn't want to lose the seat. I don't know the inner workings behind the scenes, but obviously there are a lot of people that don't agree with it, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I don't. That guy's just he's a great politician in the way that he is able to bend his mannerisms in order to fit whichever way the wind's blowing. I despise that guy, man. He is the rhino of rhinos, war hawk, just a terrible, terrible human being.
Yeah, I agree. But other than that, I did see there was another report that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, audience. Sorry, I almost said Lindsey Graham again because I hate that asshole. I believe all the Epstein files were sent to all the FBI field offices. I believe I read that correctly, but that could be monumental.
You know, that's I'll believe it when I see it, man. I saw a number of like 14 terabytes of information have been sent over, but also like it's gonna take a while to go through, and I just have to like keeping up on it is a good thing, and keeping pressure on our current politicians to release it. That is important. So I shouldn't be so black pilled on it, you know, because
it's hard. It's hard to do.
It is, man. I mean, it would be nice just to have all of them released, but it would cause so much chaos and vigilantism more than likely. So it's probably a good thing that they don't just release it all.
I mean, we've talked about this before. The deep state, they're it's very intertwined. So it's not only politicians, but it's celebrities. It's also people that we've never heard of before. So those are the people that are behind the scenes, like the NGOs or the lobbyists, or these people that are really deep rooted in the system, that are behind the scenes, that we don't even know who they are. That's, to me, in my opinion, that's the actual deep state. Not these politicians, because they're just paid puppets. Let's just be real.
In most cases, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess I can't say all, you know, but I would say 99.8% are deep enthralled in this stuff. But what do you think about? So there's another few things that came out today. JD Vance was on the gun range today at Quantico, shooting a 240 Bravo. That was pretty awesome. Did you catch that or no?
I didn't see anything about
Oh
that.
man,
That's cool.
dude, yeah, I can just shoot a 240. I thought that was pretty cool. And a lot of people were like, "You think Tim Walz could do this? You can't reload a shotgun." You know, that whole best BP ever type thing. I thought that was pretty cool. But
Speaking
yeah.
of them being our politicians being puppets, check this out. So this is in Colorado. This is our representatives in Congress. Hard at work here. As you guys can see, they're all just on their phones, scrolling through TikTok or Facebook, whatever that app is. You know, this is during the workday. This is while they're supposed to be legislating.
Right.
This is how much they care about you. This is how much effort they put into all of these laws that have 2,000 pages that they're trying to pass at the last second. You know, and then they're doing this, and then right before they vote, yay or nay, yay, passed. Right. They have no idea what they're voting for, and this is why we're in as much trouble as we are. Right. They just do not care about you.
Man, that would have been so awesome if they would have pulled up one of my TikToks, like as they were going through, like one of mine. Like that would have been so cool, man. But anyways, I'm probably not in their algo. Whatever.
Probably not. You guys, we have a great guest with us today. So I wanted to wait a couple minutes so we can get some people in here. If you can, please share this podcast. It's the only way that we're going to grow, and the only way that we're going to, keep improving. We don't have millions of dollars to advertise out and get our podcast in front of everybody. So if you enjoy what you see, if you support Steve and I here at the Cowboys and Indians podcast, please just share this show out on all of your socials. But we have William Kirk. He's been a lawyer in Washington State for the past 30 years. He knows his stuff. He runs a YouTube channel, and it is called Gun Law Washington, Washington Gun Law. Sorry about that, William. But I really appreciate you joining us today, so we can we get to discuss a little bit about the Second Amendment, the Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution, and many other things as far as the gun laws being passed in this state. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I would say maybe give our audience a little background about you. I know Maurice kind of gave you our audience a little intro, but kind of let everybody let everybody know who you are, what you're about, and some of the things that you have going on right now.
Yeah, sure. So born and raised here in Washington State, born and raised in King County, Washington, attended public high school out in Des Moines, Washington, Mount Rainier High School, went to Washington State University for college, went to Gonzaga for law school, worked as a King County prosecuting attorney, had the great pleasure of working for Norm Mailing at the King County Prosecutor's Office back in the day, went into private practice in 2000, and have been in private practice ever since then, had a very large, successful law firm for a number of years. During the pandemic, when everything was in lockdown, but a lot of people were experiencing our summer of love around here, they had a lot of questions related to firearms laws and self-defense laws. I started the YouTube channel really as just a way to kind of cut back on the volume of calls. Didn't have anything else to do during the pandemic, so every day I'd go into the office with nobody there and look at all the comments, and someone would be like, "Hey, you should do a video about this," and so I did it. And one thing leads to another, and you wake up one day and you actually got a decent subscriber, and you think you found a nice little niche and keep doing it, and that's kind of evolved into an almost full-time content creator now through Washington Gun Law.
Almost 500,000 followers. You're up to 447,000. You guys, if you're interested at all in the technicalities of gun laws and what actually goes on behind the scenes, what is trying to be pushed. I mean, you don't just cover Washington.
Not at all. No, we could never have grown to that size. No, actually, we cover every state, and we're in fact, in some months, I actually have more subscribers in either California or Illinois than I do in Washington, because they are states continuously pushing for civilian disarmament legislation as well. And what I found is that there's not a lot of lawyers out there that can look at the law or the case law, whatever it is, and then just use simple English and communicate it back to everyday Americans so that they can understand, here's what's happening to me and my rights.
See, and this is why I really connect with those videos, because being from a small town, I like it broken down into simple terms.
Well, but that's how we communicate as humans. And I
Yeah.
think that lawyers, the only lawyers who really know how to communicate are trial lawyers. Okay. And you can always tell the difference between a trial lawyer and any other lawyer. Because the trial lawyers had to get up in front of 6 or 12 people who weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty. Right. And, here you go.
I mean, yeah.
Right. And you got 10 minutes to take 2 weeks worth of evidence and a stack of jury instructions. And you got to give them a story in 10 minutes that they can believe in. And you're going to have to use normal, simple English. And that's what trial lawyers learn to do. So all I really do with my videos is it's the closing argument. I take a really complicated, word salad case, and I pull out the 5 or 6 things you need to know, and I give it to you in simple English. And when everyone's done, they can close their laptop completely infuriated, but also go, I understand what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
I operate that way too. In the Army, we use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple. Yep.
That's amazing. So I would say, what states would you say have the most issues right now? Obviously, probably the liberal or the blue states, but do you operate mainly just like trying to fight back against gun control activists, or do you guys also go to more like conservative states and try to solidify and bolster gun rights in those states?
Well, unfortunately, it's a great question, Steve. And unfortunately, right now, the civilian disarmament regime is so active in a number of states that most of the energy, at least from Washington gun laws, tried to spend, educating the public about there so that they can get involved, that they can call their legislators, that they can get, involved in representative government. We do have some states out there, though, that are going exactly the opposite direction. You see states like Arkansas and Louisiana and Oklahoma, states like that passing, concealed carry advancement acts, Second Amendment protection acts. We have gone from just a handful of constitutional carry states to 29 constitutional carry states in just the last few years. North Carolina could become the 30th here pretty soon. So when we live inside the bubble of Washington State, like Maurice and I do, it's really easy to think that the Second Amendment is just it's on life support. And in some ways, in this state, it is. But if you take a more national perspective on it, no, the Second Amendment is alive and well in most parts of the country.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And like you said, it's tough. It's tough being here in Washington State and looking at the Constitution. And then looking at the gun laws that they're passing, I've had a really, really difficult time with trying to understand exactly where they kind of derive their authority from to do this. Because, I mean, not only do we have the federal Second Amendment stating explicitly and clearly that it shall not be infringed, but in the Washington State Constitution, Article 1, Section 24, it says the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. And then in Article 29, or Section 29, it says the provisions of this Constitution are mandatory unless by express words they are declared to be otherwise. And in all of my non-lawyer speak, it seems to me that the laws that they're passing right now should have an expressed and clearly written, part of the law that states why they have or how they have the authority to even do this. So we were talking a little bit about this before the show started, but where do they get the justification for their authority?
Yeah. So I think that if you're going to try to get me to pinpoint, if you take a look at Article 1, Section 38, you're going to see that it says there's nothing there. And it's really the difference between how conservatives and progressives view representative government. Okay. And this is what I mean by that is that the modern day progressive has long since lost faith in the individual altogether. They have no faith in the individual. And therefore, they believe that government needs to dictate all aspects. And so because of that, they end up with this attitude that we actually work for them. I think that you still see, especially in true conservatives, the recognition that, no, they work for us. And without authority to do things, because they're there to work for us, they don't have the ability to remove our rights. What happens on a purely legal level, if you really want to geek out about it, is under state constitutional analytics, the Supreme Court in this state would say that the old two-part balancing test could still be used, and therefore the societal benefit outweighs the individual infringement. For that reason, it passes a state constitutional muster. On the federal level, they have a much more difficult time doing it, but you begin to see these absurd rulings, such as out of the Seventh Circuit, the AR-15 is not even covered by the Second Amendment. You see states like California and the Ninth Circuit making just ludicrous rulings. And so they just literally ignore the precedent of the United States Supreme Court and its pretty clear mandates.
Absolutely. So control is the idea behind this. Has there been like an escalation of gun infringement in Washington State since COVID happened? Because we know some of these left-leaning states, they lock down their people. You know, you can continue employment unless you got the vaccine. I just, in my heart of hearts, I feel that was like the turning point where some of these progressives really started to wrench down and try to control their populace. Have you seen in Washington State the increase of gun control legislation?
Absolutely. And I think, Steve, you bring up a good point, which is gun control has never been about the guns. It's about the control.
Correct.
That's what it's all about. What this state was working its way towards civilian disarmament. Maurice can tell you that as well. What happened during the pandemic is this earth-shattering epiphany that a lot of people had, which is even though politicians and mainstream media had told you for years you don't need a firearm, when the collective you-know-what hit the fan, the American people went out and decided it for themselves. And that's why you saw this massive increase in first-time gun ownership, CPL applications, and things like that. That obviously worries those on the progressive left because they see that as a form of losing control. Correct. And so what we need to do then is remove that from them. And so what Washington has done is they start with a magazine ban, they move to an assault weapon ban. There's been a lot of other laws passed contemporaneous with that. And now their next step is well, you have to obtain a permission slip from government before you can even go purchase a firearm.
And me and Maurice were talking about, go ahead, sorry.
That's one of the more infuriating ideas to ever come across the legislation here in Washington State. And just the fact that we're an open carry state as well. You know, we don't have constitutional carry in the way that you know a lot of these states that have now passed it have it, but we can open carry. You don't need a permit to actually carry a weapon.
That's right.
But for some reason they want to now declare that you need a permit, which includes, I believe it includes training for like de-escalation training.
Yeah, live fire training as well. So you have to, and listen, I'm not opposed, in any lawful responsible gun owner will tell you there's no such thing as being overtrained. Okay, the more training, the better. But to condition that training before you can exercise the right, the thing about it is if you just wrote out on a piece of paper, this law requires that you pay for a license from government after proving your worthiness before you can buy a gun. Okay, because that's basically what it does, right? Well, buy a gun out and just write vote. Now, how offensive does it seem? Right? Or go to church.
Or speak. Or remain silent.
Yeah, or be silent. Or get a lawyer. Or like what the Democrats want to pass in the Senate Joint Resolution here in Washington State, where they would actually codify abortion as a constitutional right in the Washington State Constitution. Put those words right at the end of that sentence, and let me ask you there. How offensive does that seem? And that's the thing that people that are ambivalent on the Second Amendment need to understand is that if they get away with it here, they're going to start putting it on First Amendment things. They're going to start putting it on Fourth Amendment things, Fifth Amendment things. And next thing you wake up and you got no constitutional rights at all. That's how it works.
Yeah, some people would like to say that the First Amendment is the most important amendment in the national Constitution. It's not. It's the second. Because without the Second Amendment, we have no other amendments. And that is the only reason why we are still the free beacon on this entire planet, because if the United States falls, everybody else will fall right along with them.
I couldn't agree with you more.
There's also seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding of where our rights stem from.
Yes.
Because I've had a conversation. Well, I've had many conversations over X, and there's a substantial amount of people that just believe that our rights are agreements between man. Like that's where they come from. It's just basically people get together and they say, okay, these are the rights that we grant. But
Mhm.
with the Declaration of Independence, it's clearly stated that our rights stem from our Creator, and
Yes.
they are inalienable. And it is the duty of our government, our man-made government, to protect those rights. And if you don't have that understanding of the fact that your rights are outside of government, and it doesn't even have to be from like the Christian God, right?
No,
That's why
it's your
they
creator. It's
yeah.
whatever you believe your creator to be. Period.
Yep. It's beyond our understanding of where we come from. That's
Right.
wherever we come from, that's where our rights come from. And we're born with them. They are inalienable, and it is the duty of our government to protect it. And for some reason, the lefties and liberals nowadays just believe that they are allowed, or that they have the authority in any way, shape, or form to restrict those rights. And the our Second Amendment it doesn't just cover guns. The reason they said arms was because they knew that guns were going to advance, but two, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When you have the right to life, that means that you have the right to defend your life. Well, the Second Amendment's in there so that way you can uh, have the ability, not on an equal playing field to what the government can do, or any of your citizenry can do, uh, in order to defend your life. Like that's where it comes from. This isn't about, it's hardly even about guns. Like it is, because that's the weapons that we have and know of that are the most effective, or the, it's
Yeah.
the arms of the day.
Doing the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, your first of all, your assessment of where the rights come from is dead on correct. What the Second Amendment merely says is that it is government's duty to protect those rights, and that our government cannot and shall not take those rights from us, period. What I think we need to understand about the Second Amendment, it's not the right to possess a firearm. It is much broader than that. And it's not even the right of self-defense, although that's included in it as well. It is one of the most basic human rights that is imaginable, which is it's the right of self-preservation.
That's a good way to put it.
And what we need to do on our side of the fence here is that we've been losing the labeling game forever. Ghost guns, assault weapon bans, high capacity magazines. I mean, they just out-label the crap out of us. Okay,
Sure.
We can start labeling better, and we can do it actually accurately, because our Second Amendment right is the right of self-preservation, the ability to preserve our own individual life, to preserve the life of our family, to preserve the lifestyle that we have chosen for our loved ones. We have the right to preserve all of that. And that's what and that is not only, and that's the most important thing to understand, is that is both from private and public violence. Okay. Private violence is the one we talk about all the time because it's in the news. The mugger, the robber, the carjacker, whatever. That's private violence. It also is there to protect us from public violence, the type of violence that government can inflict upon its citizens as well. We have to, if we truly have to analyze Second Amendment cases by looking at the history, why don't we look at what we had just finished off when we drafted the darn thing? Okay. Do we honestly believe we were only looking out for the hunters? Or were we in recognition that we had just, through armed conflict, freed ourselves from a tyrannical government?
And guerrilla warfare tactics at that.
Yeah, well,
it wasn't nice. We weren't playing fair.
No, but that's just the way it needed to be done.
And we've seen this time and time again. You're speaking about labeling, and I think the self-preservation holds a lot more weight. It's not these like buzzwords that they come up with all the time, because the self-preservation is more fundamental.
It
is who we are as a nation and as a people. So I really like that. I'm going to use that from now on, because it makes the most sense to me.
Let me give you a quick story, if I may, real quick. That would be almost a year ago now. I was put on this speaking panel in front of a large Hindu community in the Seattle area. And unfortunately, they put me on with the guy running for governor, the guy running for U.S. Senate, and the guy running for attorney general. So they told me I was going to get 15 minutes. But by the time those three blowhards were done talking, they go like, okay, you got 2 minutes. I'm like, oh, really? I had this really nice speech prepared. But I'd had a lot of folks come up to me as I was waiting to speak, and they were all like, listen, we're a very passive community. I could never, ever purchase a gun. I could never take another human life. I just don't understand that whole mindset. And I must have had a half dozen of them say that to me. So I get up, I only got a couple minutes to go here. And I was like, listen, I know a lot of you are struggling with why we have the Second Amendment. And so what I'm going to do is, because I know you people are all of faith, is I'm going to talk about universal truths. And what I mean a universal truth is I mean something that no matter where you come from, no matter what walk of life, no matter how you see the world politically, religiously, whatever, we can all agree on this. It's a universal truth. And the first one is that you and your individual life, your individual human experience is a unique experience. There will be no other like it in the history of the world. And for that reason, it is worth preserving and defending. Can we all agree on that? And everyone kind of, who's going to disagree with that, right? Okay, right. Second thing is the lifestyle that you've chosen for yourself, for your family, how you raise your family, your religious practice, your dietary restrictions, and everything else that goes into it. That is a unique human experience. There will be nothing like it at all in the history of the world again. And for that reason, it's worth defending and preserving it. Can we agree on that? And, they're all nodding their heads. And I was like, okay. And the third universal truth is that you and you alone are responsible for preserving it.
Wow.
Right? And I get that all those folks have a lot of hope and a lot of faith, and I admire that. But sometimes you need a little bit more than hope and faith. You need a plan B. And I told them, I said, whether that involves a gun or it's pepper spray or a stun gun, or I don't care what it is, but please have a plan B, because it is your responsibility to preserve your life. And that's why we have the Second Amendment, and why the Second Amendment is for everybody. It's for everybody, regardless of your walk of life, regardless of how you see the world, regardless of what pronoun you want to use. Lawful and responsible gun ownership is for everyone.
American citizens, on my point.
Yes. American citizens, we the people.
Yeah.
Well, there's case law directly on point to that recently, so that's an indisputable fact right now.
Right, because I remember during the Obama administration that I think it was sorry, not the Obama administration, the Biden regime, that an Obama judge granted, I believe, Second Amendment rights to an illegal. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, and ultimately what it comes down, you got it dead right. What it ultimately comes down to is the Second Amendment says that you cannot strip those inalienable rights from the people. However, when you're an illegal alien, you are not a member of the people as the court contemplates it, and therefore they may be taken from you.
Correct.
Well, and that makes sense, because that entire argument, I don't really like having as much, because people want to justify, I guess, us using up all of our resources to not grant the rights, but recognize the rights of the citizens of the world. And as of right now, we can't do that. We don't have the ability. There's no way.
No. And when your very existence in our country is an act of illegality to begin with, it is very difficult. I think you don't need to go to law school to figure this out. Are you really part of the people as our constitutional structure contemplated it? And certainly when you go back at the time we drafted the Constitution, there wasn't a mass influx of illegal immigration going on. So I don't believe that was envisioned by the founders.
No,
there was a mass amount of legal immigration going on. Yeah, there was a tremendous amount of that going on.
Definitely. So I think maybe there are some people in our audience that that really feel that any gun law is an infringement on the Second Amendment. I do agree with that as well. So, do you believe that any citizen should be able to own a M249 or 240 Bravo, any kind of belt-fed weapon? Or I just want to get your stance on it and see your take on that.
So, if we simplify the equation to shall not infringe, and we simplify the equation to what's announced in the 10th Amendment as to the powers that are saved for the federal government and the rest reserved to the states, then the argument is a very plausible argument. However, when we take a look at what the constitutional analytical structure is when we take a look at pre-existing gun laws and are they or are they not constitutional. One of the things that goes way back in there is that we can find that there are several laws related to banning certain people from possessing firearms, dangerous individuals, I think. And that goes back even before, that was pre-Revolutionary War. So under the current constitutional analytical structure as it exists, and I don't see this changing. In fact, right now, it's probably as good as it's ever going to get, and it can get a lot worse if the Supreme Court were to go back the other way politically. I do believe that there are some gun laws that have historical precedent and therefore are probably in all likelihood constitutional. I don't subscribe to the theory that every single gun law is in fact an invasion of constitutional.
Okay.
Right. Now, could I be wrong on that? I could totally be wrong on that. It's not an issue that I would totally dig my heels on and say, because I'm giving you more of a geeky answer of, hey, I just know how the Supreme Court and all these other courts view when we go back in history. And like the very first laws on banning certain people from firearms, I think is like 1649, the Virginia colony. Okay. So we got a rich history of doing some of this stuff. And that is the litmus test by which even the conservative courts are taking a look at gun laws.
Gotcha.
So Eddie brings up a good point here, because Washington State's trying to do this as well. That they're trying to grant the authority for our police force to hire criminal aliens, or non-citizens rather.
Yes.
Of this country. So how, in any way, shape, or form, is it legal for them to have U.S. citizens have to have a permit in order to buy a gun, but they will grant non-citizens the ability to have a badge and a gun and used against us? How is that not conscripting a militia of their own?
Well,
outside that works outside the Constitution, because that's what it feels like to me.
What you're talking about is Senate Bill 5068 in Washington State.
Yes.
And I've actually been, Julie Barrett with Conservative Ladies of Washington and I have been kicking around on that for a while. And so what the bill does is it takes situations where law enforcement, prosecutors' offices, and other government agencies could hire individuals with green card status, permanent residency. And it has changed the wording of that to say anybody who's authorized to work in the United States. And so what you go from is from immigrant visas to non-immigrant visas, and they're allowed to work for law enforcement. But here's the thing, and this is probably what my video is going to be about. If you take a look at federal gun laws, you can have people with green cards in most states can actually possess firearms. But those that are here on a work visa, they can't possess firearms. They cannot. So could they be hired by the police department to answer phones or work at the front desk? Yeah, I think they could do that. Could they hire them to be police officers? I suppose they could, but they can't be armed. And there's no way that the state of Washington could write a law to say, well, in this case, it's okay, because it's not state law that's holding it up. It's federal gun law that says if you are a non-resident alien, you cannot possess fire, even if you're here legally. Then, if you really want to get into it, the type of work visas that we have are for these specialty occupations. So you see it in the tech field, you see it in the medical field, you see it all that. And I'm not knocking law enforcement, but I don't believe that law enforcement is such a highly specialized field that we have to bring in, foreign employment. I get it might be an undesirable field for some. Yeah. So it is a terrible bill that I don't even believe could be implemented. It doesn't mean the Democrats won't pass it. If it does, then all of the concerns that you already articulated are completely valid. It is. You could literally have people who are in this country, who are not a citizen of the United States, enforcing an unconstitutional law against a lawful resident and citizen of the United States. That is an equation that could actually occur.
And I think a lot of people are nervous about this because there's been a lot of conditioning going on for the general populace, your personal safety over your individual freedom type things. And we've seen that a few years back during the pandemic. And, there were hotlines that were given out to people to, okay, that person's out of their house. We'll call you in and rat on you like the communists that they are. So I think a lot of people are extremely nervous. And I'm sure, especially for you guys in the Northwest, where it's almost like they're testing the waters with this type of legislature. They're saying, oh, let's try doing this, even though we probably think it will get denied or not passed. But hell, if it gets passed, then we'll see what happens. But
Well, think about this effect it could have on law enforcement if you could really make something like this stick.
right,
Is that it really doesn't matter, I think, what state you're in. If you know people in law enforcement, actual officers, troopers, deputies, whatever, they're usually pretty conservative, and they have a tendency when you're in states like Washington. And I ran into all sorts of troopers down in Olympia yesterday, and they're privately like, "Oh yeah, this is ridiculous," right? But all of a sudden, you start bringing in a bunch of foreign labor that come from former Commonwealth countries. So they view government entirely different. And can you imagine having a whole police department of people who are raised in former Commonwealth countries? Where, I mean, just watch the UK police right now. Right? You get that mindset, that entire level of government intrusion is much more acceptable in those cultures. And now you would have them acting as law enforcement in this state or any other state. That's immensely scary. It's almost like, having stormtroopers, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong. One more thing, Marie. Sorry. In the UK, is this? I'm not sure if this is rumor or not, but from what I understand, is their police are not armed with firearms, and if they do need to go into a residence with a firearm, they have to call a SWAT team. Am I correct on that?
You may be. The first part, I'm really certain you're correct on. The second part about having to require a SWAT team, I'm not certain. And I can't imagine how effective a British SWAT team would be right now.
Right. Throw some crumpets at you. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Article 1, Section 24, the right to bear arms in the Washington State Constitution outlines, it goes further than what I stated before, that the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. That's usually where I stop, but there's actually another...
About the armed body of men?
Yes, it says, but nothing in this section shall be construed as authorizing individuals or corporations to organize, maintain, or employ an armed body of men.
Yes.
So how like I'm trying to justify this in any way, shape, or form, because I think it's legal for Seattle to already hire non-citizens as police officers. I remember seeing that a couple of years ago, but how are they able to get around this? Now it says here that it's not construed as authorizing individuals or corporations. Is the government trying to say that they're excluded from employing an armed body of men?
They would say exactly that. They are neither an individual nor a corporation. That's what they would say. The interesting thing is that part of Article 1, Section 24, if you go back and you read the history behind it, is that during, and it really kind of comes from the Cleellum area, where there was like these coal wars going on, where these coal companies wanted to come in and shove another coal company out of the mines and stuff. And they would hire these groups of hoodlums to come in that were all armed, and they literally chase the other company out of town. You go out to Cleellum, Roslyn, all those areas out there, and that's where this was all going on. And so as they were developing Article 1, Section 24 in the Washington State Constitution as a whole, that apparently is the historical reason by which they didn't want an individual right to be construed as also granting a collective right. They wanted to ensure it was a right that vested in the individual.
Which is just completely disregarded nowadays, but yeah.
Yeah, completely disregarded. And here's the thing. I think that if you just look it up in the dictionary, Second Amendment says you can't infringe it. The Washington State equivalent says you can't impair it. And impairment probably is much easier to accomplish than infringing. So one would think that it would provide more protections, but having sat before the Washington State Supreme Court just about a little over a month ago, listening to the arguments on the magazine ban case, I can assure you that those 9 justices think that the Second Amendment or the Article 1, Section 24 is merely advisory in nature as it relates to the Washington State Constitution. Yeah.
How can we possibly get back to, I guess, forcing the government to declare their rights or where they derive their authority from to override the Constitution? Like, how can we get back to that point at all?
Other than through the electorate, which is the most organic way of doing it, you're going to need Supreme Court mandate. And then even with Supreme Court mandate, they're not capable of taking up all of the issues that really need to be resolved. And then what we've seen in recent years when it comes to Second Amendment litigation is something that's a really kind of it's not a new phenomenon, but the last time we saw it was really kind of following Brown versus Board of Education, which is a state's willingness to completely thumb their nose at Supreme Court precedent. So I think that if we were to get the assault weapon ban case before the United States Supreme Court and the United States Supreme Court struck down assault weapon bans, I think you would find states, Washington would be on that list, that would try to pass legislation that says, well, we know what the Supreme Court says, but out here, we're going to do it this way. And that is immensely scary. It doesn't matter where you come down on the Second Amendment issue, because that's when the whole rule of law starts breaking down at that point.
I feel like it already has started to.
Oh, it is. Well, it is when you take a look at someone like you see these district court judges issuing nationwide injunctions for no reason other than to stop an agenda that they're not, in favor of. That'd be like the manager at Target over in Redmond being able to basically fire the CEO of the corporation. Wow. That's what you're, right? That's what's going on there.
Man, I don't understand it personally. I don't understand how some of these judges have that much power.
They don't.
They don't until the United States Supreme Court steps in and says, listen, you're a district court judge. You get to do A, B, and C within your district. That's all cool. That's your fiefdom. But beyond that, if we want a nationwide injunction, we're going to actually have to have a court with nationwide jurisdiction rule on that. And that,
how is that not already taken care of?
It's not.
How in the world?
It's been like that for decades. I don't get it. Oh my gosh! But I think that's kind of the root.
Let's put the shoe on the other foot for a second, guys. Let's say Kamala got elected. And now she passes this, and let's say the numbers are there, and they pass legislation that's like, we're going to ban basically the Second Amendment as a whole. Well, you go try to appeal that in the Ninth Circuit. I got news for you. They're going to be like, no, they can do that just fine. So you'd have to appeal it in a place like the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit would rule in our favor. But are you saying that only the people in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oklahoma get their Second Amendment rights back, and everyone else in the rest of the country, you're still screwed? So the ability to issue nationwide injunctions or the inability to do it could cut both ways. And what the Supreme Court really needs to step in and do is provide some very clear guidelines about the very limited exceptions when it might be appropriate, and they would be few and far between.
Like maybe not negotiated transport of criminal aliens from this country, like an agreement between
turn the plane around.
Presidents. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, but go back in our time capsule just a little bit to show, to give the viewers an understanding of how insulting this is. Most people know this case, but they don't know the name of it. When I say it's Obergefell v. Hodges, okay, everyone goes, never heard of it. I was like, yeah, you have. Everyone's heard of it. It's the gay marriage case.
Okay.
It's the case that said no, homosexual couples have the constitutional right to get married. Okay. Oh. Now there were many states that were not issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. There were many states that I'm sure when that opinion came down, if you took a vote of the populace, there would be overwhelming majority against that ruling. Okay. It's just not the mindset that the people have in that state. What did the clerks of all the county courts start doing the very next day after that decision came down? Well, they started issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Why? Because that was the rule of law. And the conservatives in all of those jurisdictions, they may have not been happy about it. It may have disgusted them. That's their problem. But they issued the marriage licenses. There was no state like Alabama like, well, we're going to pass a Hodges response bill. We know what the Supreme Court said, but those people, they ain't getting married in this state. No. You didn't see that at all. But then you got Bruin comes out in the summer of 22. And what do you got? You got New York writing the Bruin Response Bill, New York Concealed Carry Improvement Act. You got California passing the Bruin Response Senate Bill 2. They literally labeled the bills the Bruin Response Bill. And that is a big, gigantic middle finger that they threw at the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has shown an unwillingness to punch back.
Because of the name tied to it?
No. I don't know why. They seem to be relatively feckless on this. The state of Hawaii completely thumbed their nose at the Supreme Court and said that the spirit of aloha actually supersedes the Second Amendment. I'm not joking. The case is called Hawaii v. Wilson. It's a real ruling. The Supreme Court had it sitting on a petition for certiorari, fancy word of saying someone wanted the Supreme Court to take a look at it. Supreme Court passed on it. That's still good law in Hawaii.
Wow.
What?
Yes.
My mind is blown right now.
I know. I'm not. Yeah, Hawaii v. Wilson. Look it up. You go to my channel. I got a video on it. I think I called it like the worst Second Amendment ruling you will ever read, I think is what I called the video.
Wow. Okay. Maybe another topic we can kind of divulge on. I'm gonna be very generic about this. How do you feel about Convention of States?
You mean like a constitutional convention?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the current time, with the political makeup of the state, I would love someone like a Gavin Newsom or someone like that to get the states together to think they're going to do one thing, because I think you could come out of it with something different. And one of the things I think you could come out of, if you actually had it, would be a national constitutional carry provision.
That's what I was kind of alluding to, but
yeah, or some type of a national concealed carry reciprocity. Because, think about it. There's no other right. Okay, Steve's down there and he's in Texas and he's got a Second Amendment right. But when he drives into Oklahoma, does he lose that right? Nope, not at all. Not at all. But you drive into other states, hey, you can't carry in that state. There is no other right that you literally can lose when you cross the state line. That is why we need some type of national concealed carry reciprocity.
Right. And when I had to, during Christmas, I traveled up to New York State.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I brought my 1911 with me, but there are state laws. The ammo and the actual weapon have to be separate from each other. I didn't lock it, obviously, but yeah, just in order to have some sort of protection, I did that just in case, because you know.
And so think about it. If you live in like Lake Tahoe, but you're on the Nevada side of it, every time you go into California, your concealed carry license is no good. And can you get an out-of-state concealed carry license? California, Hawaii, and New York were three states that did not provide out-of-state concealed carry licenses. So you can only conceal carry inside the state if you lived in that state. Now, recent lawsuits have changed that, and you're beginning to see them establish out-of-state carry licensing regimes, but it's just going to be brutal. So that's why we need some type of uniform application when it comes to what is a constitutionally guaranteed right.
Right.
Yeah.
Did Donald Trump bring any of that up, or no? Did I hear no? Okay.
No. President Trump has issued an executive order as it relates to Second Amendment rights. It really is going to give the Attorney General kind of an edict to do some things with rulemaking orders, probably withdrawing rulemaking orders, taking a look at some of the current litigation that the United States government is involved in, perhaps withdrawing from that litigation, conceding error on some cases. But most of the stuff that your viewers and my viewers want to see happen, like we got to repeal the NFA, we got to take suppressors out of the NFA or whatever it may be, that can only be done through an act of legislation. So the president is not going to have the authority to strike that down with the stroke of his pen.
Yeah, and that's true. Hey, there was one last topic that we wanted to get to before we get out of here. I know that
player sponsor.
Oh yes. Oh, yeah. I should probably play that too.
Yeah, you got to take care. You got to take care of those that take care of you. You know that.
Yes, we do. Our sponsor for today, you guys, and actually moving forward for the foreseeable future is shopwithamerica.us. If you're new here, this is actually, you know what? I'll just pull up the website right now.
You're welcome, Maurice.
Yeah, thanks, man.
That's what I'm here for, man.
Dude, I was just getting like into the conversation. So,
worried about aloha.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I got to use the restroom really quick. I'm just gonna play the commercial so I can skitter off to the restroom. We'll be back in about 1 minute, you guys.
Welcome to Shop with America, where the emphasis is on America. Our movement is to switch away from your shopping with the big box stores and the mega corporations back to supporting family-owned, made in America. We've been giving these big box stores our money every day for years. But what's happened is they've forced many small businesses to shut down. We call this the illusion of choice. We see all these products in these stores, but in reality, it's only a few companies that control it all. There are thousands of lawsuits for health damage because they put profit over our people. But there is another choice. We found a better way. There's a family-owned American factory with product integrity and have always done things the right way for the right reasons. And this company outperforms the big box stores. That's due to their month-to-month shopping club. They make everyday consumer products that we all use and buy again and again, like toothpaste, shampoo, coffee, and organic beef. Go to shopwithamerica.us today.
Hey guys, welcome back. So someone commented in the comments, number 1 and number 2, which I'm really laughing about. Go visit shopwithamerica.us. We saw during COVID how mom and pop shops were shut down throughout the country, and these big box stores kind of took over everything. But now you have, during this podcast, you have the empowerment to fight back over these big corporations that are only ran by 8 different companies, 8 to 10 different companies. And, the products that they sell to you, they're not good for you. There are a lot of carcinogens in them, a lot of, metals and all types of stuff, even in your food supply, your cleaning products. So if you want to eat clean, have healthy cleaning products, healthy everything in your home, check out shopwithamerica.us, and they even have steak for you carnivore people.
Yes. Oh, and make sure you let them know the Patriots Prayer Network sent you. That's how we get credit for it as well. So much appreciated, you guys. Sorry about that little interruption there, but that's this is how we grow. This is how we get bigger and be able to go do
just
cool, good
cap
things.
yourself next time. So you have to leave. I'm just kidding. That is Maurice.
I didn't quite hear what you said.
Put a tube inside, and there's
oh my gosh.
So
no, none of that. No, it's right after work. I chugged a ton of water because I didn't drink enough water throughout the day, and it's catching up with me right now. Especially, I drink, almost a full thing of water throughout the show. So, okay, what were we going to talk about? Okay, yes, as far as what we can do as citizens, as patriots of this great nation, I know Trump issued an executive order for the states, and we talk a lot here about the problems that we've had with universal mail-in voting and the chances of Washington being able to turn back the clock. But now Trump's executive order is I would like to hope that it changes the way that we vote. Can you explain what that executive order kind of outlined?
Yeah, no, it is, of all of his executive orders, the one that I think, if it was executed as written, would have the biggest impact on our nation moving forward is this particular executive order. Because what he really is doing is that there are several federal election laws that many people don't know about, because much like our immigration laws, they were not enforced. They were there. Some were mildly enforced. Some were just flat out ignored. Some were actually thwarted by the previous administration. And this is just a recommitment by this administration to not only bring complete and total and strict enforcement of federal election laws, but that states must also bring themselves into compliance with it, which is actually already mandated by statute. And so there's going to be a sharing of databases and an investigation all the way from the national voter registry down into every state's voter registry. It's going to involve Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, Department of Social Security, and it would be overseen by those in the DOJ department. So what you're going to have is DOJ going through voter registry with a keen eye for illegal immigrants that are or immigrants in general who should not be participating, and other abnormalities. Like, as you know, there's been a few things that have been published here in Washington where you'll find a little rambler out in Shoreline with 179 registered voters there and a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom rambler, things like that. So the voter registration and the voter rolls in every state need to be cleaned up. I'm sure every state needs to have it happen, probably some states a lot more than others. But before we have our voter registration, or our registries cleared up, there really can be no confidence in federal elections or state elections for that matter. So that's a big deal. The second big thing is that it's they are going to really push, because federal election law says that, hey, we set a time for when you stop counting ballots and when you have to have the results, and you guys are all over the board. You got Florida that cranks it out in about 4 hours, and then you got other states that takes them like a month. And Florida is a really populous state too, and they're cranking it out in no time. Well, if you take a look at federal election law, it says that, hey, no, there needs to be uniformity, and you don't count votes that come in after the polls have closed. End of story. That's it. The only exception in federal law is for overseas military members and things like that, as long as it's postmarked appropriately, which of course they should be voting and should be given that opportunity. So as long as it's postmarked by election day, their votes count, which that's it. So, and then the big teeth is that not only are they tying federal funding for elections into it, which is if you don't comply with it, we're just going to cut off federal funding for your elections. They're actually the order actually talks about cutting federal funding off altogether.
Wow.
Altogether. Like, your grants and anything else. Yeah. You're off. If you don't want to comply, if you don't want to clean up your voter roll, if you don't want to, make sure that your voter registry reconciles with our voter registry, then we're just not going to give you money anymore. So it's bold.
I got a little question with this, because I've had people bring up that state sovereignty needs to be, needs to remain, and that allowing this kind of oversight from the federal government could create some problems, such as, the next president coming in and saying that, okay, we're going to have the option to have universal mail-in ballots and counting 60 days after, or 70 days, or 120. All of a sudden that they can kind of just change the rules in that particular way. Do you see that possibility stemming from this or happening? Like, is this kind of opening the door to that?
It is opening the door to that, and that is a legitimate concern. And everything that people need to be aware of is, like sometimes Trump's issued a couple of orders where I've been like, I get what he's doing here. I'm not sure if he has the authority. And then people are like, why do you care? I was like, well, because if the shoe was on the other foot and we had another person in there and they were issuing orders that are going outside their authority, that's a big problem. That's a big problem. And so I do like that we scribble inside the lines. I think that elections routinely have been handled on a local level. The problem is that they have spun completely out of control, where we have actually no form of uniformity at all in federal elections. So while people may think it's a problem, the problem would be is that there's pre-existing federal election law that allows the federal government to do this. So if in fact people have a problem with it, they probably ought to contact the federal legislators and see if that law can be, rewritten or repealed. But right now there appears to be statutory authority to do most of this.
I guess. Well, that's good.
And listen, a lot of this could be for show. Like we were talking before we started the show here. What happens all of a sudden if 3 or 4 states are immediately suing for injunction? We're not going to do any of that. One would have to ask, why are you unwilling to comply with any of it? What's going on in your state?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it sure seems like Washington, Oregon, and California are going to, it almost feels like they're going to be building a blue wall here to defend against Trump. And so I don't see any of the states, in all honesty, complying with this.
Well, I think the hammer behind this one is the federal funding, because California relies heavily on federal funding. So I think Mr. Kirk is absolutely correct on this one. I think we'll see some change, and
we could, but then you could just get a district court in California to just issue a nationwide injunction, and well, there we go. Right?
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes, that's also a valid point. So I guess we'll see. It's going to be interesting 4 years, absolutely. And I think this country is headed in the right direction. I know a lot of people don't agree with the Lindsey Graham endorsement. There is a huge rhino problem within the Republican Party. So I don't know. I'm going to say Trump was wrong on this, but I do not know the backrooms deals, and if he has Lindsey Graham. I just don't.
Political cronyism. I mean, they're you know, as much as we don't want him to think he's a politician, President Trump is a politician now. And there obviously was a you scratch my back, I scratch your back. I share your concerns about Lindsey Graham. I really do. I share the same concerns about Mitch McConnell as well. I was not heartbroken to hear he was not running for re-election.
Either.
Yeah. I think that, you know, no matter what party you come from, if you stay in the sewer that long, you're going to become a turd yourself. And Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are all classic exhibits of how that happens.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be a lot of fundamental change in this country, not only, you know, upholding our Constitution, but term limits, I think, would be one of the best things to come out of Constitutional Convention, or sorry, Convention of States.
Term limits for reps and senators.
Yeah, I think that fundamentally that would completely change this country, just because of the illegal insider trading that they're doing. You know, these guys that are making.
Well, I think you would get a different caliber of individual to actually run for public office at that point, because you wouldn't necessarily have people looking to accumulate power and enrich themselves through that. You would know that if I run for House of Reps, I only got 8 years. That's 4 terms. That's all I got. And so you got to get in there and make a difference so that you can run for higher office or get out and back into the private sector. So I think that you would have people coming in who weren't looking to be career politicians, because our biggest problem, and if Democrats were honest about what their problems are, one of their big problems is career politicians on their side as well that just screw it all up.
Absolutely. And I think that there's a huge disparity between, you know, people that are trying to represent their constituents that have a median salary of $35,000, and then these people are multimillionaires. I just think that it gets kind of lost in the sauce. I know I'm bringing up a military term.
Well, yeah, but I found it amazing that everyone needed to see the tax returns of the millionaire who wanted to be a politician, but nobody ever asked to see the tax returns of the politician who became a millionaire.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna write that one.
Because you take a look at, you know, these Elizabeth Warrens and, you know, and the Mitch McConnells.
Pocahontas.
But let's see, you've averaged over the last 15 years $124,000 in salary, which isn't chump change, but correct. Your net worth is 80 million. How the hell does that happen? And nobody ever wants to look at that. But, you know, you get a multimillionaire like President Trump who wants to be a politician. Now we got to scour every part of his taxes. He's not the one to be concerned about.
This is again, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of public servants and private citizens.
Yep. And who works for who?
Mm-hmm. Because it's been completely reversed, and our public servants now work behind closed doors in a lot of ways, and us as private citizens have been surveyed, and every movement is documented, everything is tracked, and every transaction you have has to be, you know, not approved, but it has to be documented in any way, shape, or form. So we're no longer private citizens, because if you want to, you know, put a wood stove in your house, all of a sudden you need a permit. If you want to build a shed that's 13 feet wide by 13 feet wide, not 12 by 9 feet, you know, then you need a permit for that. And all of a sudden, every component of our lives is now documented, tracked, and it has to be approved by government. And then they're just kind of doing their own thing behind the scenes, becoming multimillionaires, and we don't know how. Right. It just happens.
That's why people are so these politicians are so frustrated with Doge and the uncovering of the USAID's money, that I like to term it that, because that's been their honeypot this whole time. They've been getting these kickbacks behind closed doors. I mean, it blows my mind that, like, for my family, like, I have to balance my checkbook. I have to balance my funds because I don't want to have to borrow. And that's what we have been doing for so long. That's why we're over $36 trillion in debt, just because these politicians are just writing blank checks to all these countries. And we know that money's coming back somehow. But the ones that have been the loudest, those are the ones that honestly should be investigated by the
but it's coming back it's coming back in a way that only benefits one side of the spectrum. It's not like the American people as a whole are benefiting from these investments. One political movement is benefiting from it. That's what makes it so corrupt. And the truth is that we do have a massive budget crisis. And when you start seeing how much they've already pulled out of wasteful spending, you ask yourself, could we have been running a balanced budget all this time? All along? Literally, we could have had the normal expenditures, the stuff we do need to spend money on, and our tax revenue. And if you took all the waste out of it, we would be running a balanced budget since the 90s. That might be possible, actually, if you really do extrapolate the math back once we get to the bottom of all of this.
It's kind of sad, but I mean, this is one of the good things about 2020 is it shook a lot of people awake, because most of our problems stem from complacency and comfort in citizens just believing that our politicians are going to be doing the right thing, and not understanding that, hey, having $124,000 annual income shouldn't make you a 80 millionaire, tens of millions of dollars in the couple of decades of public service. Right. And it's just been the comfort in believing that they're going to be doing the right thing. So they've been running unchecked for a very long time. Right. You guys, it is about that time. William, Kirk, thank you so much for coming on. You guys do not forget to go to his channel here. It's at Washington Gun Law on YouTube. Give him a subscription. Watch his videos. And like he said, man, he breaks them down in a beautiful way. And he gets a lot of really good videos out there. I highly recommend it.
Absolutely agreed.
Oh, okay. All right, we're getting back to it.
I was going solo for a second.
William, is there anything that you kind of wanted to say or promote, or anything big upcoming for you?
I want to thank you guys very much for the opportunity to spend some time with you. I enjoyed it greatly. To the folks out there, understand that you can be ambivalent about the Second Amendment, but you still need to fight for it. And I'll give you a classic example of what I mean by that. I am not a very spiritual person, and I'll be honest with you, I don't go to church. I grew up Catholic, had it shoved down my throat. And so when I got emancipated, I kind of drifted away from it. So it's not my cup of tea, but I'll die for anyone's right to go to church. I'll die for that right, because it is an absolute essential part of being American and being able to exercise our liberty. And I would need other people to understand that that's the way you need to feel about all of our constitutional rights, including the Second Amendment.
Well said, brother. Steve, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Man, just keep the faith, y'all. I know it's really difficult, and I know a lot of people are kind of frustrated with things that are going on right now, but we accomplished the first hurdle on November 5th of this last year, and it's going to take time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the golden age won't be built in a day. So just keep the faith, guys. I mean, it is very frustrating, but we'll get there.
Wonderful. And I go back and forth on my hope for Washington State. I want to stay here as long as I possibly can, but if you guys follow my X or my Twitter, you'll see there'll be times where I go hard on a lot of the politicians here, but there's a lot of good men out there fighting a good fight, like William here. Like I said, go visit his YouTube channel, Washington Gun Law. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please share the podcast. We will see you possibly on Friday at 6 p.m. We'll
see.
We might have a good guest lined up, but thank you guys. Have a good night. God bless
Peace.
You all. God bless America. We'll see you on Friday.
Dusty plains and broken dreams, Cowboys and Indians on the same team. We got no masters, only our creed to break the chains and set us free.